I'm Julie Haney, and I'm presenting with my colleague Susanne Furman. We're from the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST for short, where we conduct research about usable cybersecurity and privacy. We'll be presenting the results of our recent study about consumers' perceptions, experiences, and preferences with respect to smart home updates. First, a quick disclaimer. Throughout the presentation, we may mention commercial products or organizations, and this is for information purposes only and does not imply any kind of endorsement from NIST. Starting with our motivation for doing this research, as you all likely know, updates can be important security mechanisms, but are often inconsistent across different devices and may be underutilized by consumers. By understanding consumers' current perceptions and experiences with smart home updates, we can begin to identify potential problems and ways in which update mechanisms may be designed to be more usable for consumers. And that's where our research comes in. In 2019, we conducted interviews with 40 smart home users. We talked to them about all aspects of their smart home ownership, including installation, maintenance, and their security and privacy concerns and mitigations. During these interviews, updates were discussed only briefly. However, we found that participants' experiences with updates were often inconsistent and they seldom linked updates to security. So we decided to look deeper into this by conducting an anonymous online survey that specifically concentrated on updates. The survey was conducted in April of this year over a 2-week period. This presentation is focused on the survey results, but we'll be inserting some relevant quotes from the interview study to better illustrate some of the points. Because of the huge diversity of smart home devices, we decided to focus on 5 device categories. Voice assistants, also called smart speakers, like Amazon Alexa or Google Nest Home. Smart security devices, like smart cameras or door locks. Smart thermostats, smart lighting devices, and smart environmental sensors, like smoke and leak detectors. These categories were selected since they're among the most popular types of smart home devices and represent a range of devices for which we thought people might have differing security and privacy views and expectations. One of the goals of the survey was to see if there are differences in consumers' perceptions and experiences depending on the device category. For example, are people more concerned about updating their smart home security devices as compared to their smart light bulbs? Throughout the presentation, we'll be presenting the differences among categories when applicable. For the survey, we recruited 412 participants from a demographically diverse sample across the United States. To qualify, participants had to own devices in at least 2 of the 5 device categories of interest and be administrators of the devices. We asked participants to select the types of devices they owned, including those in addition to the 5 categories of interest, which are outlined in red here on the slide. The majority, more than 2/3 of participants, owned voice assistants, entertainment devices, and security devices. Our participants tended to have a lot of experience with smart home devices. About 2/3 had owned smart home devices for at least 3 years. Just over 3/4 owned 5 or more unique devices, with 36% owning 10 or more unique devices, with an overall average of just over 9 devices per survey participant. Now we'll get into the main results of the survey. In the first section, I'll talk about participants' perceptions of the purpose, importance, and urgency of smart home updates. We asked participants what they viewed as the main reasons to update, asking them to choose their top 4 reasons. Among the most popular reasons were adding new features, improving stability and reliability, increasing performance, and improving or fixing security. Surprisingly, only 22% selected fixing non-security bugs or functionality as one of their top reasons, and 3% said they didn't want their devices to be updated at all. In the interview study, we saw varying opinions on the importance of updating smart home devices. For example, one interview participant thought that updates would have the highest priorities because they were linked to the security of the home. However, as demonstrated in the second quote, others felt that updates may not be necessary as long as the device was still working fine. So what did we find in the survey? Participants rated their agreement with the statement, "It is important for smart home devices to be updated," on a 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. As you can see, the majority of participants either strongly agreed or agreed that updates were important, regardless of the type of device, although this number was lowest for lighting. Participants also rated their agreement with the statement, "It is urgent my smart home devices be updated when updates are made available." Similar to the rating of importance, the majority viewed updates as being urgent, again with the lighting category being the lowest. We also wanted to know how participants viewed smart home updates in relation to updates for other types of computing devices, including mobile phones, computers, tablets, and fitness trackers. We found that participants rated updating smart home devices as equally or more important than updating for these other kinds of devices. We also asked if there were situations in which participants thought updates might be unnecessary. 28% thought updates are unnecessary when their smart home devices were working just fine without them. And 27% thought updates were unnecessary in situations in which they don't frequently use their devices. This next section is about potential update issues smart home owners may face. In the interview study, some participants mentioned problems they had experienced with updates. For example, one participant mentioned having to reset their television on multiple occasions when an update failed. In the survey, we wanted to find out what other potential barriers participants may have encountered when installing smart home updates. Based on their experience with smart home device updates, participants rated how often various issues have been true from them on a scale ranging from never to always. Interestingly, participants reported that many of these issues never or rarely happen to them. But looking at the most frequently experienced issues, 45% said messages about updates were confusing at least some of the time, 44% thought the purpose of updates was unclear, and 40% said updates caused compatibility issues with other devices or applications. Over 1/3 had experienced updates slowing down their devices or home network, while just under 1/3 said that devices had broken or decreased functionality. In addition, almost half believe updates to be disruptive, and over 40% experience update installation failures or unwanted changes to the user interface of the device app. However, less than 1/3 thought that updates resulted in weakened privacy or security. I'll now turn it over to my colleague Susanne, who will talk about the rest of our results.
Thank you, Julie. In the next section of the survey, we asked participants how updates are currently handled on their devices and their preferences for how updates are installed and how they are notified of the updates. In the previous interview study, several participants expressed uncertainty about whether their smart home devices were even being updated. As one said, "They don't notify me when there's an update. I guess I just kind of assume that they happen as they go. You'd think that I'd get an email, but I guess I don't. That might be nice." Other interviewees highlighted the inconsistency of how they receive update notifications, depending on their devices. As one participant said, "Some of them notify me, others update automatically, and others I find out about either through an email or just because I'm kind of monitoring technology news in general." We found similar uncertainty and inconsistency in the survey. Across the different device categories, participants' understanding of whether updates were automatic or manual varied greatly. Voice assistants had the highest percentage for automatic updates at 46%, while environmental sensors had the highest percentage for manual updates. Note that an appreciable number of participants ranging from 13 to 21% didn't even know how updates were being handled. We asked what participants would prefer, automatic updates, manual, or both, and compared that against what their devices currently provide. In the graph, the solid bars show what the update mode is currently, and the dotted bars show what the update mode preference is. For many of the devices, what the person has now is very close to their preference. For example, looking at voice assistant manual updates in green. But for others, there's a large difference between what they currently have and their preference. For example, looking at thermostats. Less than 40% of respondents have automatic updates for the thermostats, but almost 60% chose that as their update mode preference. Preferences for automatic updates represented the largest gaps. Depending on the device category, between 9 and 23% were not notified or didn't know if they were notified about update availability, with the highest number for voice assistants. This number is even higher for notification about updates having been installed. Between 21 and 28% never receive notifications or don't know if they receive notification of update installations, with the highest number for lighting devices. When asked if and how they'd like to be notified about updates, the most popular preference was a message in the application, with a second choice being an email from the manufacturer. We asked participants what options they would like for updates. For example, if they would like to uninstall an update if it causes issues, or use a single app where they could manage updates for all of their smart home devices. Over half wished that they had the ability to choose between automatic or manual updates and choose how to receive update notifications. Uninstalling an update was the third most popular option at 40%. In another section of the survey, we asked questions related to manufacturer support and end-of-life devices. In the interview study, several participants expressed concern about manufacturers discontinuing support. For example, one participant said, "I would hope that over time the companies that support these devices would continue to update their firmware. I think in some cases that's happened, but I think in other cases the devices just get abandoned." We asked participants to rate their level of concern that the manufacturer would eventually stop supporting their device. Just under half expressed concern for all device categories. Surprisingly, the most concern was for smart lighting, and the least was for smart thermostats, although these differences were not statistically significant. Participants indicated what their specific concerns were if manufacturers discontinued support of their devices. Of note, over half of the participants owning smart thermostats were concerned that parts or accessories would no longer be available. However, this concern was not common for the other device categories. Between 39 and 48% across the 5 device categories were concerned that devices will eventually stop working, with voice assistance being on the high end and lighting on the low end. Roughly 40% of smart, security, thermostat, and environmental sensor owners were concerned that security bug fixes would no longer be released. Only 31% of lighting device owners shared this concern. We also asked participants what they would do if their devices were no longer supported by the manufacturer. 40% of sensor device owners said they would replace the device as soon as possible with a new device. This percentage was lowest for voice assistants and lighting at 29 and 30% respectively. About 1/3 across all device categories said they would replace the device with another device eventually, but not right away. Between 5 and 10% said they would simply throw the device out without replacing it, with voice assistants and lighting at 10% of those, and smart security and sensors being at 5%. Participants also expressed their preference for how they would like to be notified about loss of manufacturer support. Over 40% preferred an email from the manufacturer, while 30% preferred a message sent within the smart home device app. A letter or postcard in the mail was less popular at only 19%. In this last section, we wanted to know the level of security and privacy concerns participants had for their devices. Participants rated their security concerns about their devices from not at all concerned to extremely concerned. They were most concerned for smart home security devices, with 43% being moderately or extremely concerned. They had the least security concerns for lighting at 28%. We were also interested as to whether consumers think that most devices are secure. They were least confident about voice assistants and most confident about thermostats. But the interesting point here is that the majority think that their devices are already secure regardless of device category, despite the significant IoT security concerns expressed by industry, government, and nonprofit groups. Participants also rated their level of privacy concern for the devices. They were most concerned with voice assistants, with 44% being moderately or extremely concerned, followed closely by security devices at 43%. They were least concerned with lighting at 27%. We asked whether consumers think that most devices are privacy protecting. As with security, they were least confident about voice assistants. They were most confident about smart home security devices. Again, the majority think that their devices are privacy protecting regardless of device category. This is especially interesting given that in our interview study, participants regularly expressed their distrust of how manufacturers use their data. We've given you a lot of information. I'll now summarize the main takeaways of our results and implications of how we can use these results to improve this consumer smart home update experience. Participants generally feel that updates are both important and urgent, and many do recognize the link between updates and security. Participants often found that they weren't sure about the purpose of updates and indicated that update modes and notifications were inconsistent across devices that they owned. Participants also encountered some issues with smart home updates, including compatibility issues after installation and updates sometimes failing to install properly. They also expressed a preference for automatic updates, although many devices do not currently provide this. They would also like to be able to choose how they receive notifications that updates are available or have been installed. Almost half of participants were moderately or extremely concerned about their devices no longer being supported by manufacturers, with smart security devices, sensor and thermostat owners being concerned about their devices no longer receiving security fixes. When looking at participants' perceptions about the security and privacy of the devices, less than half had significant security or privacy concerns. They were most concerned about their voice assistants and smart security devices. Finally, participants generally think that their smart home devices are secure and private. Study results may inform manufacturers to design more usable update interfaces and mechanisms. The following are potential considerations. Note that although our study focuses on smart home consumers, improved update usability can also be especially valuable for IoT administrators in organizations who have to maintain a large number of devices. To help users make informed decisions about applying updates, manufacturers could provide greater transparency of update purpose, the importance of applying an update, especially when fixing a security or privacy issue, the update mode, and how users will be notified when updates are available or have been applied. Given that consumers have some concerns about the end of life of their products, manufacturers could be also more forthcoming about how long they will support their products and how they will handle discontinuation of support. For example, the UK is proposing IoT labels that explicitly communicate the date through which manufacturers will support security updates. There may also be value in providing consumers with options to configure automatic updates and how they would like to receive update notifications. Finally, to mitigate concerns that updates might break the device or result in unwanted features or settings, devices could support a rollback mechanism. My colleague Julie and I would like to thank you for attending our talk on smart home updates. Our contact information is available on this slide.